make my heart happy.
Oh, that's a great way to start the podcast. I was like, what should I say? And then you say that. I'm very grateful to have you on and talk to you today. It's going to be really fun.
Yes, yes. And like we were saying just a few minutes ago when we were starting, it's like whatever past lives is, or old friends, or connections that existed or exist simultaneous somewhere else at the same time. I don't know what it actually is, because a lot of what that dimension is, we don't have words for. And we use a very simplistic kind of way to talk about past lives, things like that. And I've always thought it's more than past lives. It's something bigger than that. But it's real. And you and I and Danny and a lot of people right now are remembering or gravitating to that connection, because there's a lot of work to do right now.
Yes, which we're going to talk about what the work is in this podcast. But
yes,
I mean, I have a few thoughts on what you just said. I was just reading a book by Yogananda, the guy who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, and it's the resurrection of the kingdom of heaven within you, or the resurrection of the Christ within you. It's a commentary on the teachings of Jesus. And the section I read the other day was about how in between lives, souls go to the astral realm, and they hang out there for, depending on their karma, a long time or a short time. And so like older souls, advanced souls can hang out there for a long time before they decide to come back. So like this sense of a knowingness that like, oh, our energies just click. Like maybe we were hanging out in the astral realm for a while together. Who knows?
But we can laugh, and these examples, and of course, Yogananda is quite an elegant person to quote. I mean, very profound. But the average person, certainly in America, and our black and white thinking, and especially East Coast thinking, which is even more about right, wrong, and kind of looks down even on astrology itself, which is one of the reasons why when I began teaching, I would never really bring it up. I used it like Jung. I used it all the time, but I didn't really talk about it because so many people go against it so fast. In fact, just the other day, I was taking a cab or YouTube, Lyft or something, one of those things. And I said, the driver and I were talking and clicking very nicely. And I said, so what sign are you? He says, oh, I don't believe in that. I'm a Christian. And I said, well, don't you know that the star that the three wise men followed, the three wise men was the name they gave astrologers in those days? It was astrologers that sought out. And the whole story is about astrology. And the reason why people, and we're just picking this one little sliver of fear, black and white thinking makes us fear being open, because we are still trying to be safe. We feel like we're being fooled all the time. It's an epidemic of it in our culture, in our world, the whole planet, certainly in America. And the authoritarian drive is one of simplisticness. You want to be right. You want to control other people. I call it old style thinking, that it's my philosophy. I actually have a philosophy that evolved 50 years ago when I first opened. And I realized that the human race was in the midst of an evolutionary leap. And that this evolutionary leap was one of consciousness, of capacity to perceive not just new ideas, so there would be new ideas, but our brains were changing to be able to hold and perceive and experience more of reality than we even knew how to talk about now. And it was going to happen pretty quick. And it was something, and quick could be, 20 days, 20 days, that's a new one, 20 years or 200 years, it wouldn't matter. It comes in chunks anyway with people all over. Like certain critical mass reaches here and another one there, and then they go together somewhere else. It's like it's exploding. And this was 50 years ago that I had this premonition, and that we were in the midst of an evolutionary leap. And I began every workshop I ever did, and I did thousands, 40 countries all over the world. I never advertised. I only worked word of mouth. I had a kind of edict when I opened, like I couldn't push, I couldn't proselytize, I couldn't, I had to always be careful to be very accurate and tell the truth, especially describing an experience that I had or something. I couldn't exaggerate it. I couldn't very hard not to leave things out. And that was a very strong imperative on me. So I couldn't push anything, and I couldn't advertise. But there was a point I was on, I just lost it. That's funny.
That's okay. I have a follow-up question anyways based on this.
Go right ahead.
I want to know about your premonition and your opening that happened 50 years ago. Like, can you describe, was it out of nowhere? Was it like a plant medicine journey? What happened and what did you see and what did you realize?
That is the best question I think anybody's ever asked me. And
Wow.
you know, it's surprising how I'm not asked that. It's really amazing, 50 years. And some people may have heard little pieces and ask a little piece, but you really asked for the whole thing. Well, what happened was I was working at the University of California, Berkeley. I was a research assistant at the Institute of Personality Assessment and Research. I devised tests and analyzed them and gave them to people, psychological tests, and was part of an assistant to a very big science foundation grant, analyzing how people saw the environment. And I was given the job, which was very easy for me and seemed mysterious to everybody else, to analyze bits of data, like hundreds of thousands of pieces of data, and make organic categories out of them. So I would just start picking up something and say, oh, that goes in that bin. Oh, well, here's a new bin to create. And I had about 350 bins, cover all these hundreds of thousands of pieces of data. And I was just they thought I was like spinning gold, like Rumpelstiltskin, because I was in my little office and I was just sorting these things out. Well, I had dreams then at this time. And one of the people that worked at the Institute with me went to see a psychic, and he was very impressed. He said, she told me things really. And I said, well, I'd love to hear the tape if I may. So he gave it to me. Went out to my car, had an old Studebaker, sitting in the car, and I put the recording in. And as I'm listening to it, I realized this woman, we realized I was in my cynical, old style thinking, East Coast, black, white, right, wrong. I didn't have room for astrology. I wasn't even suspicious about psychics, although I had intuition from the time I was a baby. And it didn't seem unusual for me to have it. It didn't seem strange. I just did it, and that's how it was. So I'm listening to this tape, and I'm thinking, she knows things about this guy, about his relationships with his father, things she couldn't hire enough detectives to cover all this. So in that moment, my logical mind proved to me there was more than logic.
Wow.
And that struck me like a bolt. And I decided to go see her. So when I went to see her, she was part American Indian, but very California. You wouldn't guess that. You might think she was Italian by how she looked. She was Anyway, she said to me, her name was Ann Armstrong. And she said, you know, Patricia, with some people, I feel like making sounds, and you're one of those people. And I'm thinking, I don't want to hear sounds. So you give me I want to see what you say. So she does like an American Indian chanting, things like that. And I'm going, oh no, please don't do that. Just talk to me. So she stops. We start. And she says, you know, Patricia, you've had many, many lifetimes of every kind of healing that there is. And you have come to bring it together. And I thought, well, that fits. That feels okay. And as she's talking, she says two things that I think are pertinent to us here. One of the things she said is, you know, you have fantastic intuition, but you're always squeezing it through a kind of grid. If it could look logical, you'll accept it. If it can't be figured out logically, you won't pay attention to it. And I thought, that sort of sounds right. And then she said, you know, now is the time for you to come into that which is yours. And when she said that, it was like I felt a soft bolt of lightning hit me, and my arms flew open. My hands were pouring out energy. She had her eyes closed, fortunately, in front of me. And I say fortunately because she reeled back and she said, you sure are a psychic healer. And if she had her eyes open, I would have discounted a little bit of that response because I would think she's looking at me do this, you know. But she had her eyes closed. And I thought, and at that moment when that happened, I felt that was when I opened. That was the beginning. And it had many adjunct pieces, chunks that came in. It was, by the way, my first Saturn return.
Okay, that was going to be my question. How old were you when this happened?
Yeah, I was 28, I think.
And how did life begin to change for you after? How did you interact with the world differently?
I sometimes describe my opening, this, that was the start of, as a being on in my life like on a escalator that was going too fast, and I could hardly keep my balance. Every day I would have not only 5, 10, sometimes 20 synchronistic experiences a day. I would have telepathic things happen. I was doing family counseling at a clinic. I was reading people all over the place. I was freaking out the other therapists because we had a once week come together to discuss problems that we were working on with people, families. And I remember this one guy telling me about this family, and I got the feeling that the father was sexually abusing the daughter, and that there was some kind of denial or allowing it by the mother, which made it all very complicated. And I said it. The next week we meet, he said, I want to know how you knew that. Because he questioned them and he found out that it was true. So those kinds of things. Another one that's kind of interesting that happened, one of the fellow therapists, identical twin, we both came early to the clinic, and she was ashen white and in great pain. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, I sometimes get like endometriosis, you know, she got terrible menstrual cramps, pains that were terrible. And I said, and she said, I understand you do some healing. Is there anything you can do to help me? And I said, well, I don't know. I just start, you know. So she sat down And I put my hands above her head. And my hands used to, when I did healing, they would get to be about this thick with energy. Just my whole body, head to toe, 12 feet wide, but my hands really strong. And I would just put it over or around. I didn't even have to touch the person, just radiating. And so I started, and it felt, let me see if I can remember this accurately. She was, so as I was pouring this energy, oh my gosh, I can't remember it exactly. It was pouring in through the top of her head, and she started to cry and say, and this is what's peculiar. She said, men give you tumors. And she said jointed things, sort of saying that sounded like a little child. It was not clear. The words were disjointed. And to go back, what I found out then after that was her mother was a beautiful woman who was a model, and she got a brain tumor when she had these two girls, these twins. And she never was the same. It disfigured her. She couldn't be the mother she needed to be. And my friend, this person, took on as a baby the mother's belief that by getting married and having children, she got a brain tumor. Now that's really strange, right? I mean, where does all that start pulling together? I was still in a pretty analytical, observational mode to all this stuff. And I'm trying to think what happened. I know. Oh, I remember. So as I'm holding the energy, not touching her, I go down on either side of her body, past her head, and towards her heart, and then to her abdominal area where the pain was. And that's when, like a bucket of ice water and boiling water would hit me on the top of my head, is when she started saying those things. And I realized what it was. I didn't quite put them in the right order, but that's what triggered me. That was something so unusual, so strange. I couldn't even, I couldn't not accept it because it was all true. And she got better and the pain went away. And I realized then how much pain and in illness, dis-ease illness that we carry is really psychic and spiritual and physical wounds, even generational wounds that are locked in the body. And the body is not going to let go because we need to figure it out. So we begin to, this is where I changed my whole idea about what disease was, and she started it because I realized that her endometriosis, the pain, the resistance was from her mother. I mean, how do you even, it's so not logical. There's not even a way you can organize that, but it was true. And I then realized that all dis-ease, I believe, actually all of it, although there's environmental influences, of course, like, radiation gives you radiation poison, so on, makes you ill. But most disease has a psychological root embedded in a trauma that was not digestible, that was not processed. You couldn't process it. And this is why so many things are so important to understand what children go through and how we treat them, even what we think when we're around them. My grandson, I used to take care of him from 3 months to 3.5 years, and he stayed overnight with me sometimes. And I started to have dreams with Bert and Ernie and Big Bird. I was dreaming about Bert and Ernie and Big Bird, and I realized I was getting his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized if I'm getting his dreams, he can be getting my dreams. And then I was really worried. I thought, I have to really be careful what I dream. You know, this put links that I wouldn't ever have thought of, made it real to me. How profound, how we treat children, what we think, how information is handed down generation to generation, culture to culture, eon to eon for our processing. The whole job of being a human being is to come here, take on a certain amount of stuff, pick the parents we pick. I used to say that in workshops, and the whole audience would moan and say,
Mm-hmm.
"It'd be so stupid to pick my parents." You know, I said, no. This is our souls. Do this. We pick this. We pick the problems. We don't come here just to be happy. It's great to be happy, and it's wonderful to follow that guide. But we come here to become conscious, to transmute energy, to heal the wounds of the karma of the past. And there are deep ways that we take this all on that we can't even almost know. So that was really a big part of the beginning, where I realized I had to really just sort of like drop the drama of, I just realized, look, you don't know. This is your learning. This is what it is. And I didn't think about it in a judgmental way anymore. I just experienced everything. And when Ann Armstrong was doing this reading, the very first thing, she said, this is the time for you to come into that which is yours. And I had that experience. Then she said, you are going to make sounds that are so powerful and transformative and healing. And the first thought I thought was, I'm not going to make funny sounds. I know what I just thought about you. I don't want to make funny sounds. And a few months later, I was at Esalen, actually, with a bunch of people, this group. And there was a woman who had a terrible experience. And I was already becoming this healer. I was just reading everybody and antidotes. Everything was antidotes. How to heal it. What's the energy that makes that move? And it wasn't intellectual. It just was happening to me. And so she had this stuff that she was very wounded about. And I began running the energy to heal her. And then she was getting better. And we had a break. And then we came back. And during the break, I was meditating, but it was more almost than meditating. I almost like went into a trance and said, you know, that stuff that she went through, you have things like that to go through yourself, and you're not facing it. And so when we came back, I didn't intend to tell you this. Maybe it's time. Anyway, I began to remember being abused when I was a little girl. And it was by someone who I actually loved. And I was so hurt by it that all I could do is say, no, 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 no. And I think I must have said no in that moment of this experience, maybe a few hundred times. No, no, no. And then at some point, I took a deep breath out came these sounds, which is like I recommend, if anybody's intrigued by this, on my website, my homepage, there's a number of recordings. There's one that happened in Egypt, in Saqqara, that I did. It's very powerful. That's those sounds. I could give you a little sample, but I am nowhere like I was. When I was younger, I could make 20 sounds simultaneously, all vibrating through my body. And these sounds heal people, open people. Let's see if I can give you So that's a little bit.
I had something come through a little bit. I mean, there's been things going on this whole conversation, which I'm going to touch on in a second, but I want to let you finish the story. I mean, as you did that, and this goes into my psychic openings in the past 5 months. So like that initial stage that you talk about is what I'm in the midst of. And when we talk to another person, we're in a co-created energy field, I've realized. And I've realized this in the way that, and it's freaked me out at first, and then if I say too much, it freaks other people out. I could feel other people's things. I could feel their stuff. Like a teammate on my football team, his knee hurts, and I know it. I feel it. Or like
Yes,
my
exactly.
dad's lower back hurt, and I asked him, he's like, "You're starting to freak me out. How do you know that?" And so
Exactly.
when you were making these sounds, this is the feeling I get in my body. It was my left middle finger. Left for me is like feminine emotions.
Yes, receptive side.
Yes. And it will be more of like a sting if it is some manipulative type of energy or thought, like trying to control. But if it's a positive, like a healing, and it's coming from love, it comes off as like a very light, like ping. And I felt that ping as you were making the sound. So that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. And you know what's so wonderful? This is describing how so much of almost the same thing can happen hundreds of thousands of versions of difference between different people. It's metaphor. Like you can have 20 metaphors that say the same thing, but they're different stories, but they tell the same story. What you just made me remember is during that time when I was opening, there was a symposium at Berkeley. How many people were there? Maybe 900 or 800 people, big group. And Ann Armstrong was one of the speakers. And they were giving psychic tests for the whole group. And I would feel like we'd have to choose between A, B, C, or D. And B would glow. The next time, C, which was the answer, would be sticky. It would feel sticky. So each time I got a slightly different, like your ping and thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was being taught.
This is how I take tests in school.
Yeah, they're giving you, I mean, the intuition was telling me there's lots of ways this can manifest. And how you physically feel the difference through your body is just different from different things. So I went through doing all these things they were doing, and near the end, they had a fellow with a projection thing, and he was putting up slides, And what we were all supposed to do is before he put the slide up, we were supposed to think and draw a little picture of what we thought the slide would be. So I'm thinking, well, I see like a mountain, and I see a man on a horse going up the mountain. So I draw this. And so then he says, okay, who saw? And then he says something completely different, something orange. And I said, oh, this is the first time. I wasn't really keeping track. My linear mind was put aside, because if I had realized even then that I was getting every single one right, I would have built a little. So I was sort of ignoring that. And then, but I did feel a little, oh, I guess I got this wrong. And then he puts the slide up, and this mountain, and this man, this horse, and this man going up the mountain. And he says, no, that's the wrong slide. And then I thought, oh, this is the universe telling me. It wasn't telepathy. Sometimes I thought maybe I'm being telepathic and I get the right answer. This was precognition. I was getting the answer that nobody knew yet, because the slide is wrong. So this whole seminar thing was about psychic ability, was like this education for me in an intensive way. And then at the end, I think I was one of 2 or 3 people that got everything right, every single one. And I thought, normally my logical mind just would interfere a little too much, and I wouldn't probably have done that. So the healing part, the precognition, the intuition, the opening of when I made the sounds at Esalen with this group, and after the no, I took a breath, and I felt again that light, like a soft bolt of lightning. This time, instead of going from my head to my feet, the bolt hit the bottoms of my feet and came up my body, and then out my mouth came the sounds, and my eyes and the top of my head. It's like almost slightly, felt like it exploded a little bit. And then later, a few hours later, I looked in the mirror. I had 2 black eyes. The energy was so strong, and it's like called Valsalvo. And it's probably I was resisting it, which caused the black eyes. That was the first time I made sounds. And when it first came through, my inner voice said, oh, well, of course you'll make those sounds. You're going to make that. Of course, that's okay. But there was this battle, is sort of what I'm trying to reveal, is that I was fighting it almost all the time, but I truly wasn't. I was also accepting it. I was opening. And it went on for 2.5 years.
Okay, wow. 2 birds just flew by the sky right when you said that. So that's so fascinating. That gives me some context. Okay, this is going to be a long integration process, and where I think it would be so helpful for people to hear, including myself, because I think more and more young people are opening fast, and it's like, we don't know what to do with this, and it can be very jarring. And when you're talking about synchronicities, like I'm not exaggerating when I say recently, especially probably the last month or so, especially the past week, few days, I'm experiencing hundreds of synchronicities a day.
Right.
Hundreds. It's like an ongoing
Right.
Life is one ongoing synchronicity at some point.
Yes.
And so something that I'm trying to learn how to better do is, okay, yes, I get precognition. I see something before it happens, or I feel energy in a room, or I know exactly when somebody's feeling fearful, or if somebody has like negative thoughts, I can feel it. Sometimes I feel I open my energy field too much and absorb that, and I actually take it on. And so how did you learn to like protect and shield your energy field while still tapping into these extrasensory abilities?
This is such an excellent question, because it is place where almost everybody, when they begin to open, has fears. There's something about me that's a little different. I came in, I also want to say backwards, in the sense that I even think the first day of my life I had a premonition. I actually have a memory of my mother, who was only 18 and my father was 19. And I have this memory, the day I was born, like an out-of-body experience of which I've had in auto accidents and things where you snap up, you're out of your body and you're looking down, you can see everything. Well, I had this memory and I didn't know if I didn't make it up, so I didn't value it as much, but I believe it is absolutely true now. But what it was then, or the feeling was, I was a newborn baby. I'm standing back, I'm looking at my mother, and she's in bed with her arms crossed, and she is just pissed. My father is not there. The nurses had sent him away saying it's going to take a long time, go back home. And of course, I was born right away. And she was so mad he wasn't there. And as I looking at her and feeling her being mad, I think, and remember, I am sort of like a baby. I think a little bit like a baby who can speak. And so I'm looking at her and I say, uh-oh, nobody's going to take care of me. I'm going to have to do it myself. And that is an edict almost. It is a base through which I've lived my life, where I don't expect anybody to help me or do anything, that I have to do it myself. And when I was about 2 years old, I remember having one of these experiences where my mother was scolding me for something. And I saw like a cartoon bubble over her head. And I saw how she saw what she thought happened. And I remember thinking, gee, I wish I knew how to write because, and by the way, I began to talk at 6 months. So I did talk in my own mind to myself very young.
Wow.
And so I said to myself, I wish I knew how to write because I think when people get older, they forget they can do this.
And you had this thought at 6 months old?
Well, this thought I had at 2 years old.
Oh my goodness.
I just included that to update the understanding that I did talk very early, 6 months. And so that gave me a venue in my own mind of words. And I have always had a dialogue with my higher self from the time I was very little, maybe always. And it is I can't attribute an age to it. It's neither adult nor child. It's my higher self at that moment. And it is, I never need to please anybody. I'm not afraid of anything. There's this place where I have a sense of security that all I have to do is ask the question and I will get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I live my life like that. I had a very high IQ because, well, of course, why wouldn't you then? But I also knew that IQ tests were not accurate. I remember one of the questions was, can a rose feel? And I thought, of course a rose can feel, but the answer they want is no, it can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always doing this kind of adjusting to appear normal enough, but I really knew.
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
wow.
it was not difficult and it was not hard. It wasn't stressful, really. It was just, I want to say it was kind of ordinary. It was just the way I was doing it. And so I did have that as a background, but I still had the bias against who I was. And it wasn't until I saw Anne and she said, now's the time for you to come into that which is yours. Boom. I opened.
Now, when you were around your peers at
Yeah.
Cal, Berkeley, and you get that realization, like, this is who I am, and you start to get all these other dimensional extrasensory abilities, do you start sharing that with people, or do you keep it to yourself? Because when you mentioned, I was playing this game, like, I would know what they want, but like I knew the real truth. Like, what's the fine line there, right? Like, of embodying what we know to be true or saying what other people will be able to understand?
Well, it's a dance. It's neither one, it's both. So what happens is that my favorite professor at Berkeley, I got 2 degrees in 3.5 years. I got all A's, except I got 2 B's. One was in psychology of women, and the other was philosophy. Because I argued, I didn't hold back and tell them what they wanted to hear. But
That's the Leo courage.
Yeah, Leo rising. Yeah. So I had one favorite professor. His name was Donald McKinnon. He was professor emeritus. He was old, had white fringe, steel rimmed glasses. He was a student of Carl Jung's, and he was a Capricorn. I shouldn't have told you right off, but anyway, so he's a Capricorn, and I understand from his teaching assistant, who was my TA when I was going through his course, his class. He said, Dr. McKinnon wrote a letter of recommendation about you that was so superlative. I've never seen one like it. And of course, I've never seen it. And who knows, probably gone somewhere. But I knew he appreciated me. He was very serious, very quiet. And he helped found the Institute of Personality Assessment and Research because during World War II, he founded the OSS, which later became the CIA. But at the time, it was a very different organization. It was psychologically training and finding people who could make good spies and survive, like going into Germany or whatever they had to do. So at the end of that course, like I always did, I wait till I got my grade. Then I'd go and ask questions I wanted to ask. I did one for an astronomy teacher that was a ridiculous answer, unbelievable. So I went to see Dr. McKinnon and I said, what do you think of astrology? And he said, oh, well, anything in my experience that's been around for thousands of years and been so influential must have something to it, which I didn't really quite expect. I knew he was kind of conservative in a certain way, but definitely deep. And the rest of the psychologists at Berkeley, except for Christina Maslach, she was great, and I had her for a class. But all the rest of them, I just couldn't believe how terrible they were. One of the first courses that I took, Psych 101, this man, I won't even mention his name because what I have to say is not pleasant, but he's strutting back and forth across the stage. And this is the 101, right? This is the class everybody has to take. Hundreds of people in the class. And he says, if any of you are interested in psychology and you think it's the study of people, get out of it, because psychology is the study of rats.
What? That just gives me such a bad taste.
Isn't it? It was so shocking. I am sort of like this as he's saying this. And I actually used to say in Berkeley, they don't believe in love because you can't measure it.
Mm.
So the psych department in Berkeley was pretty not healthy, except for Dr. McKinnon and Dr. Maslach, who did certain work with hypnosis, and Dr. McKinnon, who was kind of Jungian in his orientation. So anyway, I tried to get into his class, which was always filled immediately, and I didn't make it. But his assistant, teaching assistant, saw me trying to get in. He was also a Capricorn. He said, "Don't worry, you can join my group. You'll get into the class." So I took the class, and I guess later, George told Dr. McKinnon that I had tried to get in, and Dr. McKinnon, in a very Capricorn way, say, "The class is full." So he had just cut me off, you know. So one day at the Institute of Personality Assessment, long after the class is over and I'm working there as a research assistant, there's a party, and Dr. McKinnon comes up to me and he said, "I've been meaning to tell you, I owe you an apology for not letting you in my class." And he said, "Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa." And he was such a sweet person. So I'm going at the end of the class. I go to see him and I say, "What do you think about astrology?" He says he thinks it has to have some meaning. So I said, "So what sign are you?" And he said, "Well," very Capricorn, "what sign do you think I am?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's not that easy because there's the rising, there's other planets. You could have 6 planets all in one sign, which would look dominant, even though your sun was different. And when we're talking about sign, we're just talking about the sun." And I said, so it's after I gave all my disclaimers, he said, "So what sign do you think I am?" I said, "I think you're a Capricorn." And he doesn't push a thing. He just said, "What is it about Capricorn that makes you think I'm a Capricorn?" And I start to describe the characteristics of seriousness, earnestness, very concerned about their reputation professionally, and all these different things. And then I say, and he just nods. And so I say, "So what sign are you?" And he looks at me with a little twinkle in his blue eyes and he said, "Capricorn." So this is the kind of thing that weaves, you know, it's never to me exactly clear. And I remember when I was at the Institute, I went to see a woman who was one of the professors there. And I told her about dreams I was having, because I had a recurring dream during this time. This was my segue. When I was working there for 2.5 years, when I was working there, this was my shift point out of regular academia into going out into the world as a psychic. And it was two some years. And so I told her about this dream that I had that was recurring. And she was into Jungian things too, so she was respectful. And I had this dream once a month for 6 months. It was identical every night except the last night. It was just a little bit different. The dream was I'm walking along the beach with my former husband, and to my right is the ocean. To my left are like hotels and buildings on the beach. And as I'm walking, I see a big wave way out in the distance coming from the ocean. And I know it's going to hit everything.
Wow.
And I say, and then, I guess we had this each time. The whole dream was this. So I said to my husband, "When this wave hits, all you have to do is lift your head up and breathe." And so the last dream is like that, except I'm carrying a baby in my arms. And this baby is a beautiful baby, big, handsome, healthy baby. And as the wave is coming closer, I'm realizing I'm going to have to hold my head up, the baby's head up by its chin, and Jim's head up by his chin. And we're going to be like this when the wave hits. Then I look back down at the baby, and it doesn't look as beautiful anymore. Its eyes look funny. A little bit like the Village of the Dam, kind of funny eyes. And I think, oh, this is not my baby. It's really different. And I think, well, it doesn't matter. It's a baby. Because the question was, would I save this baby? So, of course, it's a baby. So then the thing happens and the wave hits. So that's the difference. And what I realized was, as did this professor, it's funny, he's making me cough. She said, you know, you should go into theology. You should go into a whole different venue here to be open to this. And she said, the only thing I can tell you about your dream that strikes me as really different is you're not afraid. And that really stuck with me because I realized this was a metaphor of my journey. A psychic wave was hitting the planet. It was going to change. Oh, I left out the part in each dream where the wave hits, all the buildings bend over like to make an air bubble. So the organizations, the edifices of the culture are going to bend. And the wave is going to hit, and we will be able to breathe. All we have to do is lift up our heads and breathe. So this was the dream.
And this wave symbolizes this evolutionary leap in consciousness as well.
Absolutely. Because it was after that I had the premonition of that you're in the midst of an evolutionary leap, and it was one of consciousness and capacity to perceive. And then I gave up trying to go back to the university, though I had many offers. I just thought, no, I have to go out on my own and see what happens. I would go to dinner and people would ask me questions, and they just keep asking me. I wouldn't get to eat because everybody would be asking me questions. And I remember this one couple, the man did body work and the woman did something else, Alexander or some technique. And they said, you know, we feel very rude because we can't help but ask you these questions. And why don't you give a class, charge some money, and then we can ask questions. So I said, okay, and I did, and I started, and that's how it began. And it was all word of mouth, and that's how it exploded into, 250,000 people in 40 countries. Only word of mouth, no advertising.
And so after this, you were no longer a professor of psychology,
No.
and you went completely solo?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just followed one step after another. They started it by asking me, please, to do a workshop. So I did one. They told their friends. I told a few people I was doing this workshop. And then it just grew all by itself.
And that's how it seems to work. And you couldn't know at the start.
Bullseye, gold star, right.
I mean, that gives me a lot of reassurance. And because as a young person, I feel like we are all plagued with worrying about the future. And like there's
such ridiculous rules.
Yeah, that's okay. It's true. And there's a safe path, there's security, and then there is the unknown path. And the unknown path only reveals itself one step at a time. It reveals itself as you go and as you walk. And what feels like it's happening to me in my generation is the secure path, which is like, get a job, like go to college, get a job, work there for a long time. Like with this evolution in consciousness that's happening, is that really going to be so secure? I don't know. And
Well,
maybe the
it
answer is
doesn't
not this
matter.
or that
If it's
thinking.
not insecure one, if it's not secure one day, a couple of more days down the path, a great new security will happen precisely because you allowed the one that wasn't secure to be okay. You get set up, your energy shifts, something comes towards you. This is, I have made a phrase, be filled with expectancy, but have no expectations.
This has been in my head for the last week after our call.
Because it's the openness and the expectancy of something wonderful. Is expectancy of something wonderful going to come to you is the purest form of prayer, because it's innocent. It has no manipulation in it. It's just, you're not even telling the universe how to do it. You're just saying, I want to do something good here. I want to be on my true path here. I want to, it's all the desire of goodness that your biological, psychological, social being is calling to you. You can't know. Sometimes you can know, but mostly you can't know. It's just being open and just go one step at a time. Just follow and see what you get. And if something doesn't feel good, just stop, analyze it, see what was wrong, and turn another way and expect another thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's not hard. In fact, it's so much easier than beating yourself up trying to follow a prescribed path or method that's old, that may have its good points. I'm not saying they don't ever have any value. It's just that it's too, like I heard you say it. I only listened to one little bit of your podcast with Danny.
Wow.
And it was, the issue was I'm going to cough again. The issue was, you said it. You said, yes, we get when we want to put everything in a box. And I call it box thinking. That's actually what I call it. When we think in box thinking, linear minded, right, wrong, old style, box thinking, you have closed the door on the universe to allow something unique and new and perfect just for you to come through.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't that your boxes are all bad, but adherence blindly is, because that's stopping your participation with heaven,
Mm-hmm.
with the higher form of energy, which is always surrounding us and looking for a way to help us.
Yes. And what's coming through for me right now that's making me excited is when you start to open more yourself and you embody that awareness of being open and you see a sign and you see a synchronicity happen and you share it with people, other people start to see signs and synchronicities too. It's like they're like in your dream analogy, they're like lifting their head up for a second. Like, oh, I keep seeing this number. What does it mean? Or I keep seeing this sign. Like, what does it mean? That's always happening to us, but most of us don't have the eyes to notice.
And now it's happening so much, it's sort of in the air. This happens. So now people are watching saying, this happens. It's not just what it means, it happens. That it happens means, in fact, I used to say decades ago, when you start having synchronistic experiences, you have shifted a part of your inner sensor and consciousness to be more receptive to heaven. That's why the synchronicities get through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Does the number 4 mean anything to you right now in this conversation?
Well, 4 is 4 square reality.
Okay.
And this is the grounded number of being physical, including everything. It's like the 4 signs of if each type has 4 signs. So four, and my number, my numerological number is 22, which is a master number. So you don't really reduce it to 4, but it does reduce to 4. So it's a master number that works in 4 square reality.
Okay, I think we should dive deeper into this for some reason because I was getting 4 a few times right now. Like this is live synchronicity happening for everybody watching. Like like my eyes just gravitate to the 4 on my keyboard. I look at my clock, it's 6:44, and I look up and there's 4 birds flying through the sky. So I'm like, what does this mean? So, okay, you're saying this four square reality, that's what reality is made up. It's like these 4 parts, like fire, water, earth,
Well,
air.
fire, air, earth, and water. Fire, air, earth, and water. 4 elements. These, the 4 corners, east, west, north, south.
Okay.
These are the 4 is an ancient, multicultural representation of everything in the physical world and how it relates. And it is it's almost time. I mean, my philosophy, I don't get a chance, because really I am a philosopher almost more than anything else. And then now become an astrologer, because while I always used astrology, and I used astrology like Jung did for my clients, and for my own edification, I used it all the time. And I grew in my knowledge of it. And in fact, it was funny. I learned about astrology by deciding when I was at Berkeley, they gave courses that were student courses. You didn't get any credit for it, but students would organize courses they'd like to see, but you don't get any credit for it. And one was an astrology course. So I took the astrology course, and I'm thinking, well, now I can understand how, because I knew didn't know astrology when I was being denying about it. I knew I really didn't know about it. So I thought, that's very unscientific, very illogical. If I have a criticism, I ought to know what I'm criticizing. And so I thought, well, I'll take the course, then I'll know why it doesn't work, how it can't work, and I'll be able to explain it. So when I'm not even halfway, it's about a quarter of a way through the course, and of course they choose my chart to analyze, I think, this works. So it's not logical. It's illogical, but it works. So that's when I got this real almost thunderbolt. There's more to our thinking capacity than logic. And reality is bigger than logic can even hold. And it is the intuitive mind, the right brain, that thinks in metaphor, in intuition, gets input from the greater universe. And it is our linear mind that is supposed to, when it's mature, it's supposed to keep accurate track of facts and details. And what we tend to do, have an immature logical mind, which will even lie so it can be right, which is ridiculous if you think about it. It's like playing a game where you cheat. Why are you playing the game if you're cheating? The game has no purpose then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to win. It's that separate self. It's like, I need to be right.
Exactly. That's immature logic. That's the old style thinkings. That and the desire to control other people are the 2 cardinal problems of old style thinking. And new style thinking was this evolutionary leap that I saw happening, that the linear mind and the logical mind began to be mature and be honest and keep awesome track of every detail, paradoxical ones, everything. And that the intuitive mind was like a gateway open to the universe to get every kind of inspiration and idea you could not even imagine to ask could come through. So when I saw those 2 and I experienced how it would feel if they worked together, I realized it was an evolutionary leap, that humanity would become almost something else,
Yes.
be truly its highest self.
Yes.
We're young, I remember as I developed this, and this is what I taught for 50 years, was this philosophy, really, to help people get used to the idea that there was a big change, and change came by how they think, how they choose to think, what they're open to. And so as I was thinking about it, the old style way of needing to be right was really kind of responsible for war, for suffering, for abuse of children, for men and women being afraid of one another, having no way to fix this because of this old style needing to be right, and that it was millennia old, and that human beings were only like 240,000 years old as a species, like we are. And I thought of dolphins, who have had many wonderful experiences with dolphins. Dolphins have had the same form for about 5 to 6 million years, millions of years, swimming in the ocean, the very symbol of endlessness. What kind of minds do they have because of this? But because we have opposing fingers, because we on the land can build things, make structures, develop our physicality in a very complex physical way, we kind of got a little stuck in being right. It had its good points, but it wasn't totally wrong. But it was not healthy because it thwarted the spiritual realization. And as I was looking at it through history, from the Chaldeans to the Egyptians, everything was in process. And that the amount of thousands of years that we've been Homo sapiens is so little. We are still new. We are not finished yet. So the evolutionary leap isn't exactly a new species, but a completion of this one. That we are very immature. We are short-circuiting our own capacity. And as we realize we can undo that and not do that and be supportive to each other, there's almost a rapid progression of expansion. And what I also realized was the worst part of all the old way was the fear that it generated, and the terrible ways we want to control everything because of our fear. Control each other. Men control women. Women want to control men. Everybody's trying to control everything. And then there's no connection. And so I realized the only thing that undoes that fear, old style thinking altogether, and the desire to control everyone is love. Love is the only frequency that transforms everything. And so everything just becomes pay dirt, something to look at with some love, and you'll get a new answer. You'll get a bigger picture. You'll become something else because you personally, I personally, each of us in a body, when we choose personally to bring love into the frequency, into the situation, we are altered, and we alter reality around us, and we change what people can hear and receive.
Yes. And this ties in perfectly with David Hawkins' work with his map of consciousness. I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's an energy scale. I'm actually going to share my screen and show it while I explain this. And this is probably a good segue to pull up a chart too in a minute.
Oh,
But
yeah.
let me share this window. Share. Boom. This is what I love about doing a podcast on Google Meet, is like I can just pull up something on Google.
It's fantastic.
So this is the map of consciousness by David Hawkins. And maybe they'll show the whole thing here. I'll just zoom in. Cool. So essentially, based on your point, you talked about when we get out of the separate thinking self, the rational brain, which is this level of 400 and reason and everything below, we enter non-linear reality, which is the spiritual paradigm. In the
Yes,
calibration of that, in the energy log, which is all just a measure of frequency, is love. And so the new earth that we're shifting to, the collective consciousness that we're heading to, is a humanity
exactly.
that calibrates at love. But right now we calibrate around, like, I think it was 208 or something as of like 15 years ago. But only in 1985 did we go above the red line. This is actually all falsehood. He has a book called Truth versus Falsehood. This is self-destructive. So before 1985, I believe that was the date, humanity calibrated below truth. And so we were literally self-destructing. Like, we're on a path towards extinction, but only in the past 25 years have we shifted above the level of courage and into truth and into living in alignment with God, reality. And now
Love,
the
love.
leap is, how do we get the collective consciousness up here? Now, another thing you'll find interesting too is this energy scale is logarithmic, meaning it's exponential. And so
Yes,
one person calibrating at 1,000, so Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, they counterbalance all of the negative energy of all of humanity. And
I
so
agree.
for even just you teaching from these levels, I think it's like five. If you're calibrating at 500, you're counterbalancing the number that comes to my head is like 75,000 or 200,000 people that are
Yes.
calibrating below here. So this is the
And
shift. This is the leap.
the people who like go to workshops, I mean, I still meet people who say, I went to your workshop 25 years ago and I'm only just really getting what you were telling me.
Yes.
But when they're getting it, they are resonating, they are becoming senders.
Yes.
And that's why it's a critical mass can so easily be reached
Yes.
once enough people start. And I believe we're in a time for that. And all the darkness and the real intense black and white thinking, power over, you don't feel safe unless you got your foot on somebody's neck. Well, that will never make you safe.
Mm-hmm.
Never. If the person doesn't like having your foot on their neck, they're going to fight you. So it's a silly thought. It's a silly way to think, actually. It's almost silly.
Yeah.
War is silly. It's a foolish thing
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have to do that. But it's our fears that and our style of thinking that locks us into it.
Yes. Yes. And this is all in, like, the survival paradigm that you're talking about. And what's coming up for me is this idea of like a mass illumination of human consciousness, right? Because darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. When you bring love into a situation where there's darkness and you bring
Uh,
truth, there's no way other than those people to see to see the truth.
Absolutely true. And I've done it 1,000, 100,000 times
Mm-hmm.
in all kinds of situations and places,
It's
countries.
incredible.
And it happens. I've been in places where people have guns and they're about ready to shoot each other, and the energy will change. And they'll
Mm.
just, well, let's not do that. Somebody will walk away, something will happen. It's powerful, but it's no power over anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's a radiant freedom to be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say the word, my license plate was beautiful.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah, to be fully yourself is beautiful.
Yes. I think that's a beautiful jumping off point to the astrology chart, because something I want to talk about is, like, everybody has a highest frequency of the different aspects of their chart and everybody has the lowest frequency. So the fullest
Yes,
version of you, the beautiful version of you, is just calibrating at the highest expression and highest frequency of your individual chart. So how about this? Before we go into your chart, I need to take a little bathroom break.
okay,
You want to take like 5 minutes and then come back?
sure, sure.
Okay, cool. Back. Hello.
Hi. I was noticing, can you bring this chart down just a little so I can see the midheaven?
Yeah, and we also have the different positions and houses here. If you'd rather, we can kind of go in both.
We can do what?
Do you see here we have the different positions? And the houses here?
Oh,
Or is it a bit
yeah,
small? I can zoom in if it lets me.
yeah.
Here we go.
I actually like looking at the chart because the
Okay.
chart is a whole thing. Okay, now the midheaven is 1057 and Jupiter is 1024. It looks like Jupiter is being put into the 10th house, but actually it's in the 9th house, exactly conjunct the midheaven degree. So I have Jupiter and Saturn exactly conjunct just this side into Sagittarius house, the philosophy side, but exactly conjunct the midheaven, which is your career.
Okay.
And the Uranus in Taurus, which I am now having a Uranus return, which I think is 22 or 24 now, 24 right now. And it goes forward and back, and it's going to keep going, I think, until June or something. So anyway, Uranus is not happy in Taurus. Uranus is electric, air, mental, futuristic, ahead of its time thought. It's almost surreal reality. Taurus is Earth, fixed Earth, grounded Earth, ruled by Venus, the most physical earthy sign there is. And it doesn't want any of that funny stuff. That was my objection when I was first opening.
Uh-huh.
My lower note Uranus was not happy
Mm-hmm.
with astrology. And by the way, Uranus rules astrology.
Interesting.
Again, it's from heaven. It's from heaven. It's knowledge that just we get to look at. And where did I put it? Oh, did I move it? I took some quotes, and I had some quotes from how could I don't know what I did with them. Anyway, I had some quotes from Benjamin Franklin.
About astrology?
Oh yeah, he was an astrologer, and that's what his almanac included was here's some. Where's this astrology quote? I have them on. I can't believe I moved it away.
Well,
Anyway,
look, we can ask ChatGPT for his astrology quotes.
yeah, because he said something that's been around. He answered almost what.
Wow. I didn't know he was an astrologer. He says, I conceive myself to be the only honest astrologer now living. That is to say, the only one who tells the truth.
Yeah,
Wow.
he also said that it could be still. It was practiced by every culture, leader, general, person, all through human history. And he's a Capricorn. I love Capricorns because they're very serious.
Mhm.
And I am, as much as I do love humor and beauty and fluidity and movement and change, I'm very serious. And I take everything I do very seriously, not too much, or you defeat the purpose, but enough. And he, Benjamin Franklin, he said two quotes. What did I do with it? I just had it here. Oh, here it is, hiding it. Is that read or is it backwards?
It does. Let me stop sharing so then we can see it. Okay. Yes, it says, "Oh, the wonderful knowledge to be found in the stars." Can you move it to your left a touch?
Huh?
Can you move it to your left a little bit?
My
Other way,
left.
other way. Yeah. Even the smallest things are written there if you had but the skill to read. It's incredible. And I know that like J.P. Morgan and Nikola Tesla were into this as well, but I didn't know Franklin was into it too.
Yeah. And he said, and here's one of his quotes from his Almanac. Franklin, courteous reader, astrology is one of the most ancient sciences, held in high esteem of old by the wise and the great. Formerly, no prince would make war or peace, nor any general fight in a battle. In short, no important affair was undertaken without first consulting an astrologer. This reminds me, this is the second time I've thought this, and I don't want to forget to tell you because it was quite an interesting thing. I was in England, and they have a lot of Egyptian artifacts. They took quite a lot out of Egypt. And there was this one great big room that had panels with little scenes, little items in each one, glass covered, lit, huge room. I walked into this room and there's nobody in the room. And I had a strong feeling I get in churches sometimes, cathedrals, or certain places in Egypt. I have had it happen. I get a really strong feeling to make those sounds. So I'm at the museum, in London, and I walk into this room and I feel this strong feeling. And then I said, well, there's nobody here. So I made the sounds. And when I opened my eyes, I looked dead ahead and I walked straight over to the window. There was a mummy, not a mummy, a sarcophagus. And you could see the paintings on the inside all the way around were the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked modern. They were so accurate. And I'm looking at it, I go, wow, look how it's almost exactly the same. And then I look down to the little plaque, and it says simply, mummy of a woman who made sounds.
Whoa.
That's a big synchronicity.
Whoa. Yeah. Do you think it was you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows these things? But it's something. And Egypt when I was a little girl, when you ask little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? I used to say, I want to be an Egyptologist.
Whoa.
And I used to read the encyclopedia, and I used to look up things for the Egypt. And I knew about their religion. It was something I had a strong connection. And when on the cover of Life magazine, they built the dam, the Aswan Dam, I knew it was flooding. I used to feel safe that so many wonderful temples and locations were preserved in the dry desert. And when they built the dam, they flooded it and they destroyed it. As a little kid, not too little, maybe 11, I cried because I knew they destroyed what I thought was safe, that we could someday find again.
Wow.
Was the dam.
Wow. Yeah,
And
your insights, even from a young age, are so deep.
well, they were not of this world exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that all seemed normal to me. Everybody else looked a little crazy. I thought, and I was kind to everybody, and I thought, they just don't understand. They don't have any idea. And I thought, men and women, why do they lie to each other all the time? It's so silly.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't understand it. Why are they doing this? And so I didn't have really real friends. I've always been a loner. I had acquaintances that were considered friends, when I was in school. I could never find anyone to align with that would understand. It's not that I didn't like certain people. I liked them, but I couldn't talk to them about most of what I thought about.
Mm-hmm.
They just couldn't comprehend it. I remember one girl who was a friend of mine, and she used to like I Love Lucy. And I thought it was one of the stupidest things on television. And I thought, and I said that, I must have said that. And she said, you don't like I Love Lucy? And she wouldn't talk to me after that. Like there's something awful wrong with me because I didn't like the foolishness. But I don't know why it said that. That seems so unimportant.
Well,
But
it's resonant with me in some ways too, because there's like varying tiers of friends. Like there's different degrees of friends. Like with a certain friend, I can tell him everything that I experience. Another friend, we're gonna stay on the surface and talk about football. And I'm learning to realize like that's okay too.
it
That's
is, it's
okay.
even.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
it's important. But then not having that like soul tribe can be really hard if you don't have those people to talk to. It's why I feel really blessed to come into this at this age, because I have friends from all around the world that are interested in this, and like we can call each other anytime. So
Excellent.
yeah, in my immediate environment here, because I'm in college, I'm on a football team. I don't talk about this with
Where
anybody.
what city are you in?
I'm in a city called Lisle in Illinois. It's like outside of Chicago. It's like 30
Oh,
minutes outside of Chicago.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm playing quarterback and I'm studying psychology. So
Oh, fabulous. Well,
yeah,
quarterbacks are very special people, aren't they? I'm not a real uh, interest in sports, especially organized paying sports, but the actual sports are beautiful. The But I've always thought quarterbacks are really unique people. They are
definitely.
combining several things all at once to be an effective quarterback. And I could sense that. I could see that. And I hardly know how the game is played. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not a follower really.
if you're spot on, and I think, well, a few things. There's a quarterback in the NFL who is kind of infamous for being open to these ideas before anybody else is. Like he's gone and done ayahuasca a few times. He's very into healing, and I've heard through various people that he like uses psychic abilities in football. Because I was thinking for myself, I don't want to out myself too much, but I'm like, I don't know if any other quarterback is perceiving reality how I'm perceiving reality right now.
Right.
But they might be, but they just won't say, which is fair. And another interesting thing here with astrology and quarterbacks is maybe the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, actually, like
Yes.
Boston, New England Patriots.
Yes.
He has the same birthday as me,
Wow.
August 3rd. So he's Leo. And it very much fits his, if you know anything about Tom Brady, he's very much like a leader. He's a
Yes.
very strong leader.
Yes.
So
Oh,
I'm
he's always struck me. He's also very handsome. And he also, before you said you had the same birth date, I was thinking you're very much look like you have the same birthday. I was thinking that. I could
really,
have read your thought, because thoughts, being telepathic between empathetic people, especially within the 5 or 10 minute range, is very common,
yes.
more common than we know.
Yeah, it's almost kind of crazy to be in a conversation with somebody where you're like, "Oh, wait, are they reading my thoughts?" Like that is like, but then if you know you're both coming from love, there's
Oh,
nothing to worry about. Like one of my friends,
it's wonderful.
I know one of my friends is like pretty psychic, and he has clairvoyance and claircognizance. Like he can see, he knows. But I never have any apprehension talking to him because I'm like, okay, I'm the same. And
Yeah.
we both know we're just friends. Like there's no subtle manipulation behind it.
Well, manipulation is old style thinking, and it is what kind of corrupts our spiritual and psychic ability. And I used to say this evolutionary leap is going to leave everybody with ESP. We're all going to be doing varying degrees of it. And
Yes.
and some people are real good in certain ways, but not others. It's not all the same. And I am kind of well-rounded as I am, even astrologically, where I have kind of equal parts. If you weight each planet and its power, I have equal parts fire, air, earth, and water. And it's good for an astrologer to have that, because I empathize with and experience like the Leo energy, and I can feel the high note and the low note. I mean, Leo particularly too has such a lovely high note. I mean, it's radiant, gracious, abundant leaders. generous. It's a wonderful quality. When it's the low note, it's fearful and insecure. Then it has to be boastful, and it has to need attention constantly, and it needs to be right all the time, whether it is or not, because of that insecurity. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's one of those good friends you can say anything to. And my very best friend like that died last year. So I lost her. And it was a real loss because she was the only person who knew me inside out for 50 years. She
Wow.
was originally sort of a follower, but she read me all the time. And she was honest. She was a Sag too.
Nice.
So anyway, that's not what I was going to say. So my friend, who's got like 4 or 5 planets in Scorpio rising as well. I think Aries moon. She and I can talk about anything, and she's
She
trying
sounds
to.
intense from those few things. The
Well, you
Scorpio
know,
and Aries.
yeah, she's intense, but she has harnessed with the conditioning of her childhood. She harnessed or squelched or ordered this intensity to be nice,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes works against her. And she's a sort of a famous person, so I'm not going to mention her name now. But she and I talk almost every day now. She's trying to get me to write my book, and I'm going to write a column for Rick Rubin. You know Rick Rubin?
Yes, that's where I heard you first on his podcast.
Oh, he is so good. And his book is wonderful. It's so kind and simple and unpretentious, yet right on the mark and so deep. I think I feel him from Egypt. I don't know why. And he was a
Interesting.
client of mine some 40 some years ago, a couple of times during that time. And I saw him change and grow. And when he wrote the book, I thought, oh, I got to see what he wrote. I got the book right away. Immediately, I ordered it. I read it like all in one day. And all I did was grin and smile and chuckle and laugh and say, oh, how wonderful, how good he's doing it. He's saying it in a way that's easy to take, easy to take. That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can say an awful lot of things that are true, but not totally in the service of other people transforming from it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he does that. So now how did we get here? Oh, friends that you can say anything to. Well, she's helping me. She asked me questions. She's a public person, so she has a good antenna for what questions people have.
Mm-hmm.
So she asked me questions, and I have a conditioned program in myself, which I came in with actually, not to offer what I'm not asked for. And so she's asking me, and she's asking me good questions, and it just pours out of me. It's like a flood. I get all this information, and we're recording it. And Rick has asked me to do a column on his website, and I've been writing things. I've delayed terribly for many reasons, but not least of which, and wasn't going to say this, but my oldest son, very beautiful athlete also, tennis and water polo, basketball, died about a month and a half ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. He chose it. I mean, he was ready because he had Parkinson's, and he was Aquarius, Cancer moon, very sociable, loved people, loved helping people, satirizing, just a beautiful person, handsome. And he got Parkinson's, and he was in a relationship that didn't help him at all to heal it, and resented him having it. And so he got miserably worse all the time. And he chose it. I couldn't talk him out of it. All his good friends from high school couldn't talk him out of it. He wanted to stay where he was. Very stubborn. And I thought, this is a karmic thing. This is something. He came in to do this. And when he'd had enough, he ate a piece of pear and choked on it and died.
Mm.
And I am, part of my coughing and my nose running is my physical body grieves for him. I loved him unconditionally, totally. My firstborn 10-pound baby boy walked at 6 months old. Just beautiful. And he, at that level, and he had a cancer moon, so at that level, physically, I miss him. But I knew how much he was suffering, especially the last 6 months. And it was not going to get better. It was only getting worse. And so he just decided, I've had enough, and ate a piece of pear and said, I think I'll have another. And he choked on it and died. And part of me says, okay, honey, I get it, right on. But, and I know he's happy. That's the first time when I was told he died, I just felt happiness for him because I knew he was free. And I could feel that. But on the other hand, simultaneously, I just cry and cry. It's like part of me loved him so much, and the body did not like it that he died. And my body is the part that's grieving. But my soul and my spirit and my intuition and my knowledge know he's happy. He's free.
Mm-hmm.
There's no problem at all, really. So I don't know why I brought that up, but maybe it's important for someone who's listening to know that you can have that paradox. I love that you bring up paradox all the time in your podcast with Danny, because paradox is
Mm-hmm.
the consciousness beyond duality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's reality. And that's where we're moving, to a consciousness beyond duality, able to live in it. So when we notice paradox and embrace it, using the best of both poles of it or parts of it or whatever it is. I actually did a workshop at the University of Arizona called The Power of Paradox, because new style thinking embraces that paradox. There's a quote by one of my favorite quotes by a composer, a famous composer, Alfred Newman, from the 50s and the 40s. He composed music for many movies, the theme music. And I came upon this actually through a friend showed it to me. Always wished it was my quote because I think it's so beautiful. He said, truth is a dancer in love with paradox.
Mm-hmm.
So truth moves like beautiful moves with love, in love with everything, especially paradox, which is the next dimension,
Mm-hmm.
capacity to think. So it's a very deep quote, and I thought it was lovely that it was a musician, really, a composer, who said it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Thank you for sharing that about your son. And I think it was meant to come through because I had a grandmother who I was thinking about. I thought about her yesterday and today, who just passed away about a month ago.
Yeah,
And she was 82 and um suffering pretty badly at the end of her life. And
problem, yes.
like that same realization and state that you're talking about with your son, it was it was how I was feeling. Like
Yeah.
there were moments where tears would come up, like grief would come up, anger would come up, all of it. But
Yes.
my higher self knew, my intellect knew, my spirit knew that like this is just time and that's okay. And having an understanding of the spirit and the soul, and that like not just an idea of like, okay, maybe there's some afterlife and like she's gonna be
You're
okay. It's
right.
like a knowingness, like you're gonna be back at some point. And
Of course.
you're gonna be in this incredible and on this incredible adventure.
Well, since we're doing this about the death thing, I think it's really important, obviously, to become through. My mother was a Taurus. Oh, you look good. That was complicated. But anyway, my mother's a Taurus, and she had breast cancer, and she didn't believe in anything. She didn't believe in God. She didn't believe in life after. She thought when you die, you disappear. You're gone. It's over. Your body's gone. It's over. It's, back to the earth. You're not around anymore. And I was having a conversation with her, and I said, Mom, what if by considering that there's more to your consciousness after you die, you empower it to happen?
Mm.
Would you consider it? And her eyes widened. She banged the coffee table with her fist and she said, that's just ridiculous. We don't know. We should know. And she said, if when I die, I'm going to come back and let you know if there's such a thing. She died about 3 or 4 months after that. She was actually, oh, Jesus. Her oncologist gave her an overdose of morphine and killed her, actually, which, just like that thing we were just talking about, even the death certificate said overdose of morphine. But when you have a serious disease like that, you're tolerant to much less. You can't take so much of it. But I realized she wanted to go. And she kind of told everybody off, I was told. She told her sister-in-law, my father, and this doctor. And when my mother wanted to tell you off, watch out, she was. So my father told me he was ashen, and he came and he said, oh, she's in a bad way. She's in a bad way. And then he gave her the overdose. I didn't know any of this. I was the last person to come visit her. She was in her hospital room. I went in and she was like sleeping. She was actually dying. I didn't realize that at the time, but she looked like she was sleeping. And I felt all this healing energy, and it was coming through in big waves and beautiful colors, like pale lavender pink and white and gold and silver. It was very beautiful, soft rainbow pastel colors pulsating. And every time it would come through me in a big surge, she'd go, oh. And I thought, oh my God. And I packed the whole room. I packed to the room and I walked myself out. And I said to my husband, and I hadn't smiled for 6 months because she was in such a bad way. And I said to my husband, that's the best healing I ever gave. I think she's going to get well. And I went home smiling, feeling good. And at 2:00 in the morning, my father calls me to tell me that my mother died. And then I realized, oh, that was the healing she needed to die with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very important thing. I have many stories I could tell on that. That's true. We need to be born in great frequencies of love, and we need to die in spiritual space. My husband, when he died, we were no longer married. And he was also killed by the medical profession. They really messed him up. They tried to get him less than that. They moved him. They did it something else. And so finally he's in a coma. And I'm with him, and he's dying. There's no way out of it this time. And I am with him, and I knew him really well. He's a Pisces, Cancer moon. And he was wounded. He was a very wounded person. And I always loved him very much, unconditionally. And he used to say, "Why do you love me? I don't even know why you're with me. You know so much more than me. I don't even know why you're here." And he, a little aside, he asked the psychic one time, "Why is Patricia with me?" And she said, "Well, you were together in Egypt and you were a priest and she was a young acolyte, and you helped her, you taught her things and gave her so much support. She said, I'll always support you."
Oh my gosh.
And he was so relieved from that. He said, "I don't know if it's true, but it sure made me feel better."
Yeah.
So it probably was true. And the thing then with this state now, he's in this coma. His heartbeat and his blood pressure's so low. He's around for almost 2 hours with almost no blood pressure. They can't believe it at the hospital. Why is he still breathing? He should be not here. Well, I was with him in a telepathic rapport. I knew all the things he was afraid of. I knew what he hadn't finished working on. I knew why he was blocked. He was asking me questions. I was answering questions. We talked for 2 hours in this rapport of intensity. And when he finally got it, I thought, oh, he got it. And then he died.
And what was it that he got?
Why he had so much fear and could never get over it. He was afraid. And one of the things they did to him in the hospital was a nurse, a male nurse, Jim always was afraid of being helpless, powerless under somebody's capacity to harm him physically. And this nurse was sticking this thing up his nose, callous, cold, almost enjoying being sadistic. And Jim's eyes, the beautiful eyes like you do, beautiful light blue eyes, and he's like in horror. And I walked into the room and I saw him doing this and I yelled, you're hurting him, you're hurting him. And then the alarm went off and Jim had a heart attack, the whole thing. It just collapsed from that moment.
Wow.
But the hospital, a machine that was supposed to be running his blood broke down, and then they had to ship him to Stanford, and then Stanford was mad because now he was in a coma and they were left with the problem. It was all crazy American medicine, just awful. And anyway, so what you asked me, what it was, he was afraid that we used to look at it and he couldn't find the place in himself where he had the power to transform things. He wouldn't accept it, really. He didn't believe it. Therefore, he could never get it. And that's the simplistic thing. It was a little more complicated than that. And by his questions and our interaction, it was one of the most meaningful moments, maybe the most meaningful moment of my whole life, being with him when he died. It was absolutely essential to his life experience that he had the experience of death the way he had it. It was essential. And even his family, his sisters, they would all just sit at the foot of the bed, stand, while I would just stay there for hours. They didn't know what I was doing. I was holding his hand. And we were having conversations. I totally could hear him. He could hear me. He asked questions. It shows you everything is not what we think it is. And that's one of the reasons I'm telling this truthful story about this, is because it reveals death is not what we think it is. In fact, I'm in an anthology about some guy wrote about people when they were dying. And I had an interview there with them, and it was about my grandmother, my mother's mother, also a Taurus. And she is in a coma and paralyzed. And my mother, she's in New Jersey. We were in California. My mother didn't want to go see her. I said, well, Mom, I work for TWA then. I said, I get a pass. I'll go visit her and I'll be with her. That's okay. So I did. And when I'm in the elevator in the hospital going to her room, she was kind of a little bit of a roly-poly lady, very sweet, almost a little naive. And I thought, she's not going to look the same. She's going to be thin. She's in a coma. So I was like bracing myself not to have an influence that was not healthy, not helpful. And as I walked into the room, I thought, oh, she looks okay. And I thought, Graham, what is it you need? What do you need to know? And and she's just nothing. I hold her hand, I take her hand, and I realize what she needs to know is that she did a good job. Now, she lived when there was no welfare. Her husband died of scarlet fever when he was 32. She was left with 3 small children. She cleaned toilets in the Prudential Building in New York to support her 3 children. And she had a hard life for that. And I think felt guilty even. So I said, oh, Graham, Mom is great. She's got a great job. She's very happy. My boys are beautiful. I'm happy. We're so grateful to you. You did a good job. And then she smiled and squeezed my hand. I think a tear went down the side of her face, but she smiled. And then my uncle, my mother's brother, who was the one left to be the head of the family, he was only 13 when his father died. He said, tell Patricia, I will always be grateful to her. I do not know why, but Mom died with a smile on her face. So telling her in her serious desire to be good, she did a good job and we were all okay. These are the kinds of things we don't make room for in our culture. We isolate things, we knock people out with drugs, we just don't let people visit. We do all these things that are not right because it's poignant when you die. It is a gateway from one dimension to another. And we come as pretty serious beings to do something. And we take on a lot of crap to process and transform. And we should be grateful that we do as good a job as we do whenever we do, and give ourselves and each other a break to bring love into every situation we possibly can, because that's what transforms the fear. And the fear is always the evil. Evil spelled backwards spells live. And all that evil is when you're not living. The devil spelled backwards spells lived. And there is no devil except the energy that refuses to respect being lived. And I just had so many experiences and premonitions like this. And I've been with a number of people who died. And it always seems effortless to me at the time. It's like, especially with Jim, it was awesome. It was a marathon, and it was complex, and it was deep, and it was what he needed. So it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And the second one was when my son who died was born. That was another great moment. I had natural childbirth when people didn't do that very much. I was only 17.
Wow.
And I had this huge baby. I spoke Spanish, so the house doctor, he comes in with another doctor, and they're speaking Spanish. I'm this big blonde with 10-pound baby. They called him the football player because he was so big. And Abel, he turned his head, he turned over one day old. He turned over. He got upset and he grabbed something and pulled himself over. So everybody was impressed with his physicality. And so the doctor says to the other doctor, and he's talking in Spanish, of course. He said, "You see that big blonde over there? She had this huge baby and she was smiling the whole time."
Wow.
And I said,
Yeah.
doctor.
That's what's so unique about these stories is like these events that are normally seen as deeply traumatic or very, very challenging, death
Yeah,
or like giving birth, you're smiling through it all.
yeah,
You're in the frequency of love. So,
yeah.
and thank you so much for sharing these stories because they're very personal, but they have so much depth. And I think it would be great to know for myself and the audience, what would your advice be on how can we better be with death? At first, what came in my mind was how can we deal with death? But then I was like, it's not to be dealt with. How can we be with it?
Well, that's you say it. You have to be with it. Death is a transition. It's a portal, and the physical body is like. I sometimes think of it like we need to treat our physical body the way we would take care of a child. You feed it well, you protect it, you take care of it, you put it in good experiences to get stronger. You just be a good parent to your body, because the physical body is a entity in itself, I think, and our soul resides in this entity that and both serve each other. Both serve each other. So when the soul is going to leave the body, it will die. And so it is a portal. It is a transition from one level of participation in reality and life to another. And to not, it's again very paradoxical because while there is life, I go for every heroic means to help in a good way preserve life.
Mm-hmm.
When life is over, when the person dies, with great love, I accept the transition.
Mm-hmm.
So being with death as a portal, as a transition, as a journey, as something that the person is choosing. I believe everybody chooses their death, actually. It's another thing. With my son, I was fortunate to be with him for 2.5 days, the day before he died. And he's in San Jose. I'm in Northern California, so we didn't see each other physically all that often. So I was there with him, and we had wonderful conversations. He couldn't talk very well because of the Parkinson's, and I actually did say, as a matter of course, I said, dying's such a bad thing, And he goes like that. And then later, when I'm leaving, he and his best friend, who's another athlete, they were both water polo players, and they were close friends from little boys, dear friends. They started a sporting goods store together called Running Wild, and they did quite well, actually. But anyway, when his friend died, well, no, before he died, when they were just friends, his friend insisted that they never say goodbye, that they always say, "See you later," instead
Mm-hmm.
of goodbye. And it was a real thing. They just insisted on it. And so Mark insisted that I always say that too, that I say, never say goodbye, just say, "See you later." So when I was about to leave, some other parts a little heavy there, but anyways, I'm about to leave, I give him a hug, give him a kiss, and I'm walking out the door and I turn and I look at him and I'm about to say goodbye. And he says, "See you later." And I said, "Yeah, see you later." And before he said that, he said, "Mom, I want you to know, I love you so much." And I said, "I know, I love you too. We've got an unconditional thing going." And so we smiled. And when I left, I had a funny feeling. Oh God, this goes on and on. We had a cat named Luther, and we have a cat door in the living room. And I was going to go do a workshop, leave for a little trip, be gone for a few days. The boys were teenagers. And as I'm going to go to the front door to leave, I feel a cat. I turn and I look at the cat, and the cat turns and looks at me. And he says, I swear I hear the cat say, goodbye. I said, well, goodbye, Luther. And he goes through the door. And when I get to the hotel in the other city where I'm going, I call home and I say, how's Luther? Where's Luther? What's happening? And Mark, it was Mark, I think, that said, we haven't seen him. I don't know where he is. And I said, well, let me know, you know. And so I don't know how quickly, but he calls me back to say they found Luther curled up in the ivy in the backyard in the sunlight like he's sleeping, and he's dead. So there was this quality, is what I'm trying to say. There's a quality that feels innocent and pure and soft, not scary in the slightest, kind of treasurable. And so I still remember Luther saying goodbye. And I said, well, goodbye, Luther. And it's like he talked to me. He said goodbye. I said, goodbye, Luther. He said goodbye. So we're all in this together. And I think our old style thinking is the problem. That's black and white, either or, you're dead or you're alive. It's good or it's bad. It's horrible. It's all right. It's just box thinking that's so tight. We cause harm with it, and it exacerbates fear and sets up a difficulty to bring love into a situation, because logically we will decide they're not worthy of love. They did this bad thing. You know, it's like it's either or, zero sum all the time. And it's what makes our politics crazy. And it's what ruins our democracy. Because these are quotes I want to say. Finally, we get off death. My goodness. I have quotes from Benjamin Franklin, because he talks about, do I not have this here? Well, of course, he's one of the founding fathers of the country and the writing of the Constitution. And he says that democracy is part of how we create new information while respecting everyone. So it's not necessarily quick. It doesn't bring 100% agreement. No, it brings debate. And if you have respect in the debate, this is what he said. By the collision of different sentiments, sparks of truth are struck, and political light is obtained.
These founding fathers were so much more tapped into God than I think most people would know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, he says something about that. Oh my God, I'm being so naughty. I had all these things ready for you because I knew they were important. Anyway, one of the things he says about that is that he believes that they call it providence all the time, and the creator. They don't like to use the word God because they are smack out of, lots of horrible religious wars and dysfunction of religion being either or. You're either my religion or you're not, or whatever. And so they were cautious, but they were all deeply, from my point of view, I'm trying to reform the word religion, because I believe all the religions of the world, everyone, comes from some real religious truth. they're all corrupted by dogmas and by old style thinking about control and power over people. And they lose the essence of the religious insight. The word religion is Latin for ligere, which means link to that which is greater.
Mm-hmm.
And all religion is when you are linking to that which is greater. I actually had one of the assistants of what was probably be like the Pope in the Japanese Shingon sect when I was in Japan. He was interviewing me, he was talking to me, and he said, "So what do you teach?" Because my people had told him I was a teacher, and that he was asking me all these questions. And he says, what you teach is religion." And he meant it the way of the link to that which is greater, and that there's no argument. The argument over religions is the old style corruption of the spiritual experience by trying to control it or other people, or transform it into something linear instead of radiant and energetic connection to heaven. Yeah. And one of the nice, I do have this one quote here. He says, this is Benjamin Franklin, the hardest thing for a man to do is change one's standard prejudices of belief. But to do so is a test of one's humanity.
I had no idea that Benjamin Franklin was so profound.
He's very profound. I love Benjamin Franklin. Out of all the founding fathers, I love him the best. And he's a Capricorn because he's serious about it. Every human, even the most enlightened, probably have some faults, or not faults, but areas where they haven't processed some of the dysfunction they were programmed with yet. And sometimes it's not important to them, and so it doesn't matter, but that it's there. But he was deep. Yeah. Benjamin was deep. I like
That's incredible. This has been such a fun conversation.
I know it goes on and on.
I could go on for probably many more hours, and maybe there will be a part two.
Maybe we should do a separate one where I really do analyze my chart. We digress so much, we never did it. And by analyzing it, I mean every aspect has a high note and a low note. And I did have challenges on them. And by realizing that there was a high note and a low note for every planet and its nature, when I realized that, it was the fast track to my awareness and power to transform myself.
Yeah. Even the little insight you gave about Leo, the high frequency, low frequency, for me, that was a question I had written down. That's a gem. And seeing that within myself, when am I operating from fear? When am I boasting? Because I can think of many times where that's come up. But then on the other end, it's like when I'm completely embodied and I don't need anything and I'm just being myself, that's when it actually, everything I want from the lower frequencies naturally actualized.
Absolutely.
So I think another podcast would be so fun going over the chart. And we were talking about non-linear, linear. I had mapped out a bunch of questions, right? And that was my linear mind. Okay, here's how the conversation's going to flow. Yeah. But we're both very non-linear beings. And so the nature of
we're receptive to it.
Yeah.
And we resonate with it. We know that's where the power is.
Yeah. And so that's why this was so flowy. Maybe the flowiest podcast I've ever done, which would make sense because you're a Pisces. So it makes a lot of sense. But I want people to have the opportunity to contact you. I posted a tweet the other day, maybe it was last night, and I said, the most valuable thing I've ever invested in has been 60 to 90-minute calls recorded with astrologers, psychics, and mystics, because you can keep coming back to them over and over. And I said, if you're looking for some connections, let me know. And so I know there's people in my audience that are interested in readings. They haven't gotten a reading before. So how can they get in touch with you?
Well, basically, on my website is my phone number. It says to make an appointment, call this number. Also, my email address is there, ps@patriciasun.com. The number is 510-843-7100, phone number. So those two ways, people can phone or email me and say they'd like a session or appointment. It is it's $350 now, so it's a little bit more than it used to be, but I'm finding I have a lot more expenses that I must meet. So that's why, because I've always tried to be quite economical. It's part of my philosophy to be available. And that's why my workshops were very inexpensive. It started at $15, and I think $35 was the highest I ever went. So people could ask questions, but a private session is more expensive because it's focused. And it takes me time, other than the reading itself, before when I get ready for it, look at the chart, do it, tune in. So I think it's reasonable. I am open to sliding scale if someone doesn't have the means. All they have to do is tell me what will work.
It's really
So
kind and generous. Yeah, and it shows where it's all coming from too. Like this is I mean, it's an internal debate I've had with like many of my projects. Like, did Jesus charge people, right? But then
exactly.
we live in a material world with material expenses, and I think there's a middle way to it, but that does come in my head. And then I had a friend reflect to me. He's like, well, he received food from people. He received things from people as well. So,
Absolutely.
but I think it
Also,
just goes to show you're doing it from such a genuine place and you're such a humanitarian. And also to have your phone number publicly out there, like I don't know anybody else that does that, that makes
yeah,
appointments like, hey, just call my
that all.
phone. I thought
And
that was
people
so
are shocked
cool.
when I answer the phone on
Wait,
top of
what's
it.
that? I didn't hear, sorry, it cut out a
And
little bit.
people are shocked when I answer the phone.
I was shocked. I mean, I just was like, I'll just call this astrologist woman. I wonder what's going to happen. And then you're just like, hey, like, and we just talked for 45 minutes. Like, and that wasn't even the reading.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
that's
pretty
the
cool.
flow. And let's not set it up for everybody to think that, because I don't want to do that with
Of
everybody, or
course.
I never get anything done. But
Yes.
I did have a resonance with you. And so there you go. You know, what are you going to do? You have to resonate.
Yeah. And if somebody's still listening to this point and they want to talk to you, there's probably going to be a pretty strong energetic resonance.
Yeah, probably so. And that's why everybody that's called me from Rubin's connection has had the most awesome charts. I keep going, wow. There's this particular aspect which is called the finger of God or the finger of fate. And it is two quincunxes, and I have one. You didn't see it in that chart because you don't have quincunxes on there. But the base of it is the base of it is a sextile. That's the green connection of Sun and Mars, and the two quincunxes, which look like little blue tents with a hat on top, and it's pointing to Pluto in Leo. So my job is to use my basic self, my Sun, my Piscean knowledge in a growth relating way to the serious assertiveness of Capricorn.
Wow.
And then it points to Pluto in the 12th house, Pisces house, where all the shadow is, where all the place of wound is, where all the place of karmic undoing is, where we have to heal it and understand it. And that basically is my journey, is to help. That's why I like supporting astrology right now more than ever, because the whole world is ready to get over its bias against it because it works so well. You know, that's the one good thing. It does work. And it gives you a segue to talk about consciousness beyond duality. So logic isn't everything. It's too small. It can't hold reality. Reality is so big. It's more than that. And the astrology is energetic means you chose, and there's high notes and low notes of it, and you can use it to manifest yourself. And you can notice your low notes. Like Pisces low note, you know, is to kind of be a martyr, to suffer, you know. The high, Pisces has the biggest range, lowest low and the highest high. The highest high is Buddha and Christ. That's the high note of Pisces. The low note is the drug addict, homeless person who is deluding themselves and in not processing, having a home, they're suffering. It's just suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Jesus was a Pisces. That's why his symbol was a fish.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ is Lord Savior. And
I would love to maybe talk about Jesus for a few
I
minutes
love
before we end that.
I'd love that. I love Jesus very much. He was so courageous and so wonderful and so, I don't know what's the right word, without barrier to the innocence as he felt it coming from heaven about what his job was. He was just going to do it. And you could feel how he knew they were going to kill him. And look at the metaphor. He goes to the temple. It's the only place Jesus loses his temper.
You want to know a synchronicity? I wrote about this morning in my email.
Wow.
About Jesus flipping over the tables in the temple of
Yeah,
Jerusalem.
that's it.
Yeah.
And he's the only place he lost his temper. So what are the money changers are the banks. The priests who set him up to get killed, those are the organized religion. And and Pilate, and that's the government. So he challenged all three right where they live, and he called them a den of vipers. He said they were terrible people. He said it out loud.
I just actually
It only
saw
took
this in
days
the
that they killed
theaters.
him. What is today?
Today is the date. It's April
No,
13th.
today's the day Jesus went into the temples. Today.
Really?
Yes.
And I wrote about it this morning and not knowing this. Can you
Yeah.
believe that?
This is the day.
That gives me some crazy.
Yeah.
I'm having some crazy thoughts. Yeah.
Isn't it lovely?
Kind of. I'll tell you about it maybe after.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Much
But
love.
that's a really wild synchronicity. And I just saw in theaters The Last Supper. It's a new movies. There's part 1, part 2, part 3, and they showed that scene.
Is that from the series?
Yes, it's pretty
that guy
good.
Plays very well. Yeah, he does very well.
I wonder what his perspective is. Like he chose in this incarnation to imitate Jesus. Like that is very interesting.
Yeah, and he took it seriously. This is the better thing. I saw an interview with him about how was he handling it and how did it happen. And he said, you know, it took him a little time to realize the responsibility, and he was going to try to do the best he could to be that energy as an actor when he was doing it. And he does do a pretty good job.
Incredible job.
I'd say 98% of the time he's right there.
Yeah, and so in that scene where he flips over the tables and everything, they exaggerated it a bit in the movie, which I didn't love, and I had to look it up. I'm like, did this all really happen? Because in the movie, Jesus whipped a person with a whip, and I was like, I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
But how are most people going to know that? I thought that was a little bit too much.
It is too much, and it's understandable that when you're an old style thinker and you're not in real resonance as the main criteria all the time, you're going to flip to what the logical mind says will sell, is probable, what I do, you know, that kind of thing goes in.
Yeah, I think for the most part they do a really good job, and like
they do.
I go and I watch in a movie theater, and it's a really crazy experience. I go by myself and I'm just like contemplating everything. But I recommend it. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go. I've watched the whole series, and
amazing.
Right where the movie begins.
Nice.
Yeah. He's good. He's very good. And I'm very pleased because through all my life, I've been horribly disappointed with movies about Jesus.
Right.
Oh, they were terrible, awful.
Mm.
Some of them grotesquely awful, insulting,
Yeah.
awful. And some of them just foolishly awful. The only good thing, my son Mark actually pointed it out to me, in Ben-Hur, there's a scene where Ben-Hur is given water by Jesus. You never see Jesus' face. You only see his back, and you see him give him more because he's a slave and he's dying of thirst. And you see God, he plays this very well. What's getting his name? Ben-Hur, actor. Anyway, he looks up at Jesus and you see his face. And you see him get the love and the realization. And it actually transforms his life from that moment forward to who he becomes as Ben-Hur.
Wow.
Yeah, it's loving. It's the power of love every single time. And this is, on one hand, it's very simple and it's more than people can believe. And it's been made trite in so many ways that love is a word that's worn out in a silly way.
Mm-hmm.
But the frequency of what genuine love is heavenly, literally. I used to say, when you feel love genuinely, that's as close to experiencing God as you get.
Mm-hmm.
You are touching a piece of God. A piece of God is existing in you, and you are cognizant of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling it. You know it. You sense it. So that's a good thing to end on, eh?
Yeah, it's a frequency, not a word. That's what I was about to say, and you said
Exactly
the
right.
same thing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're on the same frequency."
So good, so good.
Yeah, this was so fun. I'm so grateful.
Me
This
too.
was
Me
really
too.
amazing.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Until the next time.
Until the next time. See you later.
Bye bye.